بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد. To continue in the study of تذكرة السامع والمتكلم of Ibn Jamaah rahimahullah, we're discussing last week, or we start to discuss and enter the chapter in which the author discusses the manners of an individual with his lessons and his reading and the sittings and other than this. So today inshallah we'll start from point 2. He says that he bewares in the beginning of seeking knowledge from occupying himself with the differing that occurs between the scholars, or between the people in that which is, from that which is heard, and other than that. For thou put one's mind to doubt and cause one's intellect to become overstressed. But rather he should be proficient firstly in one book. As for the first point, then when a beginner starts to study knowledge, he should not occupy himself with that which will deter him from understanding knowledge. Rather, he in the beginning studies the basics and does not enter into affairs which have nothing to do with him at that point. And the scholars have mentioned the difference which occur between the scholars and other than them, that at times there are reasons for it, and the beginner especially does not understand the reasons behind that, and will not be able to comprehend it. Now obviously we'll talk about differing that occurs between Ahlul Sunnah and not between Ahlul Sunnah and the people of innovations, other than that, or the different affairs of differing that occurs, as here he's mentioning the affairs of different example ikhtilaf that occurs in fiqh and other than it. Those ones, especially the ikhtilaf which occurs in fiqh and other than it, at times a person does not understand, the beginner does not understand the reason for the khilaf and what is the reason behind it. So in that case he does not enter into that. Rather he does what the scholar mentions now. He says rather he makes himself proficient in one book, first and foremost in one subject, or a book in different subjects, if he is able to handle that, based upon one statement which his sheikh is pleased with. If his sheikh is pleased with, meaning he studies a book at a time and he becomes proficient in it. He does not go all over the place to study knowledge, rather he studies little by little. As for the statement, that one statement, meaning at first he learns one statement, and he should learn, as Qazi mentioned, al-qawl al-rajih. He should be taught the correct statement, or he should learn from a book or a teacher which is known to choose to be closer to the truth in regards to these different differings that occur. So when he learns the correct statement, he sticks with it, and later on, if the proof is shown to him that the statement is not right, he changes his stance regarding that affair. But as the scholars have mentioned, he should not merely rely upon the statement that this is the statement of the majority and other than this. Rather, he relies upon books or teachers that teach him the Quran and the Sunnah. So if he sees something of affairs of the Quran and the Sunnah and the Jamaah, then he is satisfied with that. He is sufficed with that, and he is pleased with that. Then he says, if the way of the teacher is to relay different madhahib, different opinions, and he does not have one opinion only, and he keeps relaying different opinions, then Al-Ghazali, he said, then he should be warned from him, for his harm is greater than the benefit that he brings. Why? Because he will lead him to becoming one who starts to doubt and starts to turn away from knowledge. And the benefit of knowledge is not really there for a beginner in that stage, to know different madhahib. An example of this is, there's one individual that we used to know where his stances were all built upon ikhtilafat, different opinions that are different. So he'll say to you that today I am Shafi'i because Shafi'i held this madhab. Tomorrow he's Hanafi because Hanafi held this madhab. The third day after he's Maliki, and the fourth day after he's Hanbali. He keeps changing his positions daily. Why? Because his teacher taught him that way, that these 4 opinions are all valid. So based on these 4 opinions, he would constantly change them. A beginner does not understand the difference between what is right and wrong. So he's not taught this. So if a teacher is teaching him like this individual, for example, then in that case, it leads to more harm than it leads to good. So this is what Al-Ghazali and others, they warn from. That this kind of teacher who sits there and all he talks about is madhahib, this opinion is this opinion is that, and the beginner does not understand, then in that case, he leaves him and he learns step by step and does not try to learn from a teacher like that. Then he says he should also similarly be warned in the beginning stage of knowledge from looking at the different books which are long books, which are bigger books, for he will put his time to waste and cause his mind to be split into different opinions and different thoughts. But rather he should give the book that which he reads, but rather he should stick to a subject or a book and give his all to that book or that subject until he is proficient in it. And also he should be warned from going from one book to another book without necessity, for that is a sign of you becoming bored and not being successful. As the scholars mentioned, if you start a book, then it's befitting that you complete that book. Because if you're to go from one book to another book, then sooner or later you're going to leave that book as well and go to another book. And what happens there is that you do not benefit. And similar is said regarding the subject of going from class to class. You go to one teacher, you say that he is not, I don't really benefit from as much, you go to another teacher. Then when you sit with that teacher, you don't benefit as much, then you go to a third teacher. Rather, the person is patient upon that which you're seeking. The teacher is patient with his teacher. The book, he is patient with his book. That which is memorized, he is patient with that which is memorized. He completes it. He does not jump from class to class or does not jump from book to book. For that is a sign of one who is going to continuously keep jumping. He reads 30 pages of the book. He says, maybe the other book is more beneficial. He goes to another book. Then that book is not as beneficial as one and more to him. He goes to another book and he keeps doing this. And what ends up happening, he does not finish any book. He does not finish any lessons. And he does not finish any book memorized. Rather, he goes back to the way he started. He has accomplished zero. So something of the scholars they warn from. And a beginner, it occurs to him these thoughts constantly, but rather he should stick to that what his teacher has outlined for him or what the scholars outlined for him and stick to that. And you'll find in that path is barakah. Then he says, if he is able, if he has become one who is understanding and he knows, then it is more befitting that he does not leave a science from the different legislative sciences, except that he looks into it. And he says that the more a man's lifespan is elongated, the more he looks into it, then the more he'll be stronger in it. And he says that if it is not that he becomes strong in that subject, if it's not that he becomes strong in that subject, it will be that at least he will not be from those who have ignorance regarding that knowledge. And the one who is ignorant regarding knowledge, he opposes it and is an enemy of it. So this is a point that once you've learned the beginning subjects and you become a stronger student, then you should look at every subject. You should take from every subject the best of it. So that you are aware of the different benefits in every subject. So example, you take Aqidah, you take Fiqh, you take Arabic grammar, you take Arabic Mufrad, you take science of Hadith, you take Usul al-Fiqh, you take Ilm al-Tajweed. There is no science except that you take something of it. Even if you do not become strong in that subject, you do not go too deep into it, at least you are aware of the beginning stages of that subject and you're not ignorant regarding it. And he says that you should pay concern with every knowledge that which is most important. And you should not be heedless from acting in accordance to the knowledge that you've learned, for that is the intent of knowledge. Meaning once you learn all this knowledge, you should act. Knowledge is not just to know and to be one who is known that he has some form of knowledge. Rather, it's to act in accordance to that knowledge. It's to act in accordance to that knowledge. And the scholars mentioned that a person's lifespan, he is not able to benefit every single point. He is not able to attain all of knowledge due to his lifespan. His life might be cut short, or his life might be long, but even if his life is long, he'll not be able to attain everything. Yes, he may attain more than others, and be the strongest amongst them, but not attain everything. So for that reason, scholars say start with the most important aspects of that knowledge first. If you take the most important aspect of that knowledge, the rest becomes easier, and the rest is easy to understand. But if you go to affairs that are subsidiary affairs, and you leave away the foundations, then even the subsidiary affairs you will not benefit from, and the foundation you will not have learned. Then he says, point number 3, that he corrects that which he is reading, the recitation of that which he's reading, before he memorizes it correctly, either upon a teacher or upon other than him from those who will aid him. Then he also memorizes that part, a memorization which is strong and firm, and then he repeats it upon the teacher, the one who is learning for, or the one who corrected his recitation, after memorizing it, repeats a good amount. Then after that, he pays concern to keeping it and preserving it in the different times so that it may stick with him. So these are the 4 points he mentions regarding memorization. One, that when you first memorize, you should make sure that the way you're memorizing is right, that the wording is right, and that what you're memorizing is right, and you're not making mistakes in the memorization of that. And this is important because you find that sometimes people, they make mistakes in the recitation of the hadith, and at times it's a mistake which changes the meaning. So it's important to not make those mistakes. And this is not something far-fetched. People, they make mistakes in regards to this aspect much. Second, once you've done that, you're sure that this is how the hadith is read, or this is how the ayah is read, then after that you memorize it until you perfect this memorization, until it's firm. And then after that, you keep repeating it after you memorize it. And then the fourth, you preserve the memorization at different times. You repeat it and you try to remember it. For memorization, in reality, is the constant repetition of something. If you do not repeat it, man karrar, the one who repeats something, it will stay with him. So if you do not repeat it often and you keep forget about it, you memorize it, let's say, and 10 years later you want to go back to it without reviewing it, then it will not stay with you and you will probably forgot it. So it's important to review as well at different times. He said, should not memorize anything before he has corrected the recitation of it and how it is read, because he will fall into tahrif, distortion of the text, and making mistakes. And he says, perceive that the knowledge is not taken from the books, for it is from the greatest of that which corrupts one, or evils. So this is something, as you mentioned, take from a book is no problem with it, so long as the book is a book of Ahlul Sunnah, and the book is, example, now these books have tashkil in it, the harakat are shown. As long as that is 100% that harakat is good. If you have no one else to teach or no one else to help you with it, then in this case it's better to do that than to leave it off completely. But as Qazi mentioned, if one does not learn properly or memorize properly, then he makes mistakes. As I mentioned a few stories, example, the one who said that the narration Habbatu Sauda Shifa min kulli da, that the black seed is a cure from every sickness. He read it as Hayyatu Sauda Shifa min kulli da, that the black scorpion is a cure from every sickness. So he went and got a scorpion and he ended up dying. Another narration is said in the Prophet, Alaykum bis sakinati wal waqar, that upon you to come to the masjid with sakina, with tranquility, to the masjid, waqar, and being at a state of ease and calmness. He read it as saying, Alaykum bis sakinati wal fa'r, that upon you to bring a knife and a mouse. So you'd come to the masjid with a knife and a mouse. So it's important that we understand this is not something which is to be belittled. Memorize the text, but memorize it the correct way. Then he says it is befitting that he brings to the class with him a pen, an ink, and a knife to correct that which he makes mistakes in. Now obviously nowadays we don't need a knife, we have a sharpener to bring, and we don't use ink, we just bring a pen and a paper to write. And some of us, we use whatever, maybe from tablets and these other aspects that these other tools that people use. But it's important to bring something to the class to write notes and to correct that which he is reading or memorizing or whatnot. He says so that he can correct that which is needed of correction due to linguistic corrections and i'rab, the grammar of it. So it's important when you're memorizing, you have with you a pencil or something like that. So when the teacher reads to you the hadith example or the text that you're memorizing and there's no harakat on it, now when he reads it to you, you put the points and you correct the i'rab of it and the linguistic part of it. So when you memorize, you don't make mistakes. He said if the teacher corrects his mistake and he knows that he thinks that the mistake is actually made by the teacher, not him, or he knows that, then he should repeat the word. He should repeat the word so that the teacher is made aware. Perhaps the teacher is making a mistake. Or he comes with the word which is correct by way of asking. For that may occur from the teacher out of mistake, or it may be a slip of the tongue. But he should not say, rather it's like this. Rather he should be soft with the teacher in correcting him. if the teacher is not correct in these ways, then he should say to him, is it permissible to use this wording instead? So then if the teacher returns back to the correct way of saying it, then there's no more to continue regarding this affair. If not, he should leave correcting it to a different sitting with being kind to the teacher. For perhaps the correct wording may be with the teacher. Example, this happens a lot. You find that sometimes you're reading hadith and a brother will say to you that you're wrong. The hadith is read this way. But he does not understand that the hadith has different wordings. Or the scholars, they've read the hadith differently. Example, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, La ubriza kabruh or la abraza kabruh. That it's read either the Sahaba didn't want to make his grave known, or the Prophet didn't want to make his grave known. Understand? So the wording is different, and there's many hadith which this occurs in where the wording is different, and at times it is read differently by the scholars. So perhaps it may occur that you read it one way or you memorize one way, but the teacher knows that there's a different wording. So to correct him and be persistent upon correcting him in that affair, it's going to cause you harm, because the teacher may know that this wording is the more correct wording. Example, this wording occurs in Sahihain, Bukhari, Muslim, and that wording only occurs in Sahih Muslim. So in this case, when the wording he is using is more correct than that wording maybe. So it's important that when a beginner is memorizing and a teacher reads from the hadith, he doesn't rush to conclude, say, you read it wrong. Rather, he's patient with that, and he takes these steps that the author mentioned. And then if he is sure after that the teacher made a mistake in answering a question, example, he says similarly, if he's made sure that the teacher has made a mistake in answering a question, and it's not hard to mention the correct of it, then he should write it in a letter as a way of a question, or a question to correct him. He says though that he should correct the teacher in this case if there are students which are strangers, or there are students who live far away and they might not come often. Then in this case it is a must that corrects the teacher's mistake, either by indicating towards it or making it clear that the teacher made a mistake. And this, as the scholars have mentioned nowadays, he says, for indeed leaving that is a khiyana, is betraying the teacher. It is obligatory in this case to correct him by making sure that it is made known, but be kind and calm in that. And this is an important point now, especially scholars have mentioned nowadays, when the teachers, generally some of them, their audios are widespread. The audios are widespread. If they're not correcting those audios, they stay for long. And maybe people in different lands, they might hear the audio even later on after the teacher has passed away. If that mistake is not corrected, then it leads to much harm. So it's important, if the teacher makes a mistake, and you know it is a mistake, or it may be a slip of a tongue, then you correct him in that, because if you do not do so, someone else listens to that mistake, he may take it and think of it to be the truth. And why is that? Because as the scholars mentioned, some people, those who they trust from the teachers or the scholars, they take everything from them. There is no wrong that they can say. So in this case, if the teacher makes a mistake, he still thinks that the teacher is 100% right. So he sticks to that opinion, and he continues tries to persist upon that opinion, he will not leave it. So it's important in these cases, if a teacher makes a mistake, and you are 100% certain that the mistake is present, then you correct him in a nice, kind way, either by indicating towards him that he made a mistake, or by asking a question to correct him. Perhaps he'll become aware of his mistake, or by openly saying to the teacher in a kind, nice way that perhaps you intended such and such, and the mistake you made, you said such and such. And this is important so that the mistake does not stay with the people, and perhaps someone may later on take that mistake and deem it to be the truth. Then he says, point number 4, that he learns or he tries to listen to hadith from the early stages. And he should not be negligent in regards to occupying himself with the listening to a hadith, or the different sciences of hadith, and looking into the chains, and its men, and its meanings, and its rulings, and its benefits, and the linguistic benefits of it, and the different dates that occur into that subject. He says, befitting that first and foremost he pays attention to Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. Sahih Bukhari and Muslim is well known that these two books are the most authentic book after the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or as some of them said, they are the two most authentic authored books. the two most authentic authored books. And as scholars mention, majority of the ahkam are in Bukhari and Muslim. So it's important for a student of knowledge to pay attention to Bukhari and Muslim. Then he says he pays attention to the rest of the books of the scholars as well, which are known, such as the foundational books of hadith, such as Muwatta of Imam Malik, Sunan Abi Dawud, An-Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, Jami' al-Tirmidhi. He says Musnad al-Shafi'i, and it's not befitting that he relies or he suffices himself with the least of that. And the scholars have mentioned other books that are more mentioned generally than Musnad al-Shafi'i. Example, Musnad Ahmad. The reason why the author mentioned Musnad al-Shafi'i is because they say he was from the Shafi'iyya. But Musnad Ahmad is more befitting to be mentioned here. Also Sunan al-Darimi, and other than them, the scholars have mentioned these books. Then he says, and what a great book for the scholar of fiqh is the book Sunan al-Kubra of Abi Bakr al-Bayhaqi, of Imam al-Bayhaqi. And from that is the different books of Masanid, such as Musnad Imam Ahmad and Ibn Humayd and Al-Bazzar. So these are different books of hadith that he mentions that a person should pay attention to and concern with, and read them and go through them and contemplate them. And then he says he should know he should pay concern to knowing the authentic hadith and the hasan of the different narrations and the da'if. As for hadith which is sahih, then it has 5 conditions we mentioned before. That it is muttasil, isnaduhu lam yushadh aw yu'al yarwihi adlan dabitun an mithli mu'tamadan fi dabtihi wa naqlihi. That the chain is authentic, it is connected, it's a connected chain. It is relayed from trustworthy narrators who are precise in their narrations, and there is no irregularities in that narration, and there is no hidden defects in it. That is the authentic narration. Then as for Hasan, is khifatul dabt. All those conditions are met, but the narrator's precision is a bit lesser. Well, da'if is that which does not meet the conditions of that which is authentic and that which is Hasan. That which is Sahih Hasan, it does not meet those conditions, so it's da'if, it is weak. Wa musnadihi wa mursalihi. Musnad and mursal, and the different forms of hadith. Musnad and mursal, there are different forms from the science of hadith that the scholars of hadith mention, which are mentioned in the books of hadith, science of hadith. For he says, from the benefits of why he's mentioned this, because it's one of the 2 wings for the scholar of the legislation, which clarifies much of the second wing. So he says this is one of the wings for the scholar of the legislative knowledge, which clarifies much of the second wing, which is the Quran. As Imam has Sunnah, he had to fasir al-Quran, wa yadalail al-Quran. The Sunnah, it explains the Quran, and is the evidence and proofs of the Quran. The Prophet came with the Sunnah, ma yantiqu anil hawa in huwa illa wahyuha, as the same way he came with the Quran. So they are both revelations. So it's important for a person to understand and pay attention to learning the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and it should not be from those who say, I only pay concern to the Quran, for those who leave off the Sunnah and do not want anything to do with the Sunnah and only listen to Quran, read the Quran and say, I'm only learning from the Quran. Then those are Quraniyun, and the scholars have mentioned that they are disbelievers. Similarly, the scholars have mentioned, and he says that وَلَا يَقْنَعْ, he should not be sufficed or pleased with just listen to hadith, as is the situation of many of the scholars of hadith in that time, in the time of Ibn Jamaah. Rather, he should pay concern to understanding more than he should pay concern to relaying. This is an important point that, especially for us nowadays, we should, when we read a hadith or memorize hadith, we should also pay concern to understanding of the hadith, to understanding what is the meaning of the hadith, and look at the different explanations that explain that hadith, so you may benefit from it. He says, وقال الشافعي رحمه الله من نظر في الحديث قويت حجته. The one who looks into hadith, قويت حجته, his evidence or his proof becomes strong. His proof becomes strong. And this narration is authentic from Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah. He says, لأن الدراية هي المقصود بنقل الحديث وتبليغه. Because understanding the hadith is the intent behind relaying the hadith and transmitting it. So it's important for us when we look at these 3 points that we mentioned today, that one, that we pay concern that if we're beginners, students of knowledge, we learn the basics first. We don't try to dive into knowledge all at once and try to take the different opinions and different stances. Rather, we learn a stance at a time. We learn one stance and the evidence for it and the proof. We benefit from that stance, and then later on we expand our knowledge And we learn the different stances which are weaker, maybe. And maybe it might be a strong stance that is stronger, and later on you change your opinion on it. And one does not go to the bigger books until he has become strong in the beginning subjects, in the beginning books. Similarly, when he memorizes and he wants to memorize, he should make sure that which he's memorizing, first and foremost, the wording is correct, the harakat of it is right. For one harakat changing can change the whole meaning. Similarly, he should know that he repeats often, and he should repeat and review it often. And as some of them said, al-hifdhu muraja'a, memorization is constantly repeating. If you do not repeat and review, you will not reviewing. If you do not review, you will not benefit from that which you memorize. You will lose it sooner than later. And then similarly, as we mentioned, how to correct the teacher if he makes a mistake, and that he should be corrected if he makes a mistake in the open, where people might become misguided by that mistake, because it might be a slip of the tongue, but still someone may later on deem it to be not a slip of a tongue and follow it. And then similarly, as you mentioned, that he should read hadith and contemplate over it and learn its benefits and the different meanings of it, and look at the different explanation of it. So with this, inshallah, we'll stop and continue next week, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.